This morning, perhaps I'm not going to be like most others who have spoken to you so far. I thought I would take it from a different perspective, slightly different perspective. I'd like to share with you some thoughts that have been going through my mind. I haven't put them together, as you see, I have no notes or anything, but I think that when I do that, the Lord is able to speak and let me step aside. So I'm going to ask you to just bow your heads for a minute. Our Father, we thank you so much for the privilege that is ours to share together in this camp meeting. We thank you for turning our minds and our focus once more to you, to your Son Jesus, and the harmony that brings to the gospel. We ask you this morning once more as we wait, that you'll speak to us again and reveal to us what you have in store for us. We pray and we say thanks in Jesus' name. A couple years ago, I got interested in a kind of a furor that was going on. I don't know how many of you remember it, but it was called 2012. Anybody remember that? Well, something was supposed to happen on the 21st of December 2012 based on some calculations. If there's any truth in it, we're right down on it, right? But whether or not there's truth in that, one of the things that it brought to my mind was, or to my attention, was something totally seemingly unrelated, but very interesting. It brought to my attention the fact that bees are disappearing and what the implications of that are. No, they say it's Einstein. They say Einstein said that, although there is some dispute to that, to who said it. But the fact is that bees pollinate 80% of the plants on this earth. And if bees should disappear, well, we only have 20% of our food supply left. Well, maybe not even food supply, of plants. Some of them are not even food supply. And that was very interesting to me, and I thought, well, nobody knows up to now why the bees are disappearing. But you know what I thought? Right along that time, as a kind of a conspiracy of circumstances led me to think about keeping bees. One of my co-workers, was my voice that soft? Okay, thanks anyway. Oh, one of my co-workers, round about the same time, started talking to me about keeping bees, telling me it's a nice, interesting, lucrative thing, and I thought about it for a while, but I did nothing. And then, about a year and a half ago, one of my sisters from the fellowship where we are in Spanish Town, sitting right there, talked to me again about keeping bees. Said, why don't we go it? Of course, I've never kept bees. I didn't know anything at all about keeping bees. But I did it anyway. We went and we bought some supplies and I started keeping bees. And I've learned quite a few interesting things about bees since I started. Well, one of the reasons why I thought it was a good idea to keep bees is because I thought, well, if I can help to keep the environment any better, Because if bees are dying out, then I will do what I can to keep my bees from dying out, and so we'll have some more pollination going on. In my little corner anyway. But at the same time, I would say to you, if you want something that's really interesting to try, maybe you should consider keeping bees too. But I found out a few things about bees, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about bees and how they operate, for those who don't know. First of all, almost every bee you see is a female. Guys? There is one queen in the hive. A few males are born, but they do almost nothing in the hive. They eat, they hang around, and they wait until it's time to mate with a queen. Their only purpose in life, it seems, is to mate with the queen. Of course, it is said that because of their presence and their fanning, they do help to evaporate some of the water from the honey too. So they might serve a little purpose there, but not intentionally. They eat more than they're worth. I'm glad I'm not a bee in that respect, at least not in this gender. Because the interesting thing, or the sad thing for them, is that once they mate with the queen, they die. Of course, once any of those bees sting you, they also die. But the queen lays approximately anywhere between 1,200 to 2,000 eggs per day, once things are okay in the hive. And the majority of those are worker bees. The bees go through a couple of stages of development after they have emerged. At first, they become janitors. They clean the hive. Bees are very clean creatures. When you get honey, that is totally pure. Honey is probably the only thing on earth that does not spoil. You can keep it till your children are 100 years old. Yes, that's right. There was honey in the Egyptian pyramids. It doesn't spoil. So it's a good food, filled with antioxidants and all that stuff. What they do to make the honey is they go out and they collect nectar from the different flowers around, they take it back in, and they fan it with their wings until the water evaporates until it gets to the right consistency. What puzzles me is that the cell they put the honey in is horizontal. And when they fill that cell with honey, they cap it. It's full. Now my question is, how do they fill that up before they cap it? Because I would expect that any liquid going in here would run out. I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. But they do it. Amazing creatures. Evolution is a wonderful thing, isn't it? Now, if the queen should die, they make another queen. Yeah. How do they do that? Every female egg that's laid can become either a worker or a queen. So if the queen dies, or if you take out a few frames with eggs, because that's how you multiply your hive, for those who are thinking of going into it. When you have enough bees in one hive and you want another hive, you take out a few frames, with some with honey, some with pollen, and a couple of eggs, so that they have something to do. And you take some of these bees and put it in a new box. No, they don't have a queen over there. And they recognize that they don't have a queen, because the queen emits a pheromone that is constantly communicating with the workers, directing every activity that they do. And when they sense that this pheromone is not present in the new hive, they start to make one of those eggs. Sometimes they make more than one, into a queen. To make a queen, they feed that egg with something different. It's called royal jelly. And that's the only difference between the queen and the worker. The queen gets royal jelly. And once they feed royal jelly to the queen, to this egg, it becomes the next queen. Now that is what I want to turn your mind to for a minute, that royal jelly. Because, you know, as we live in this world, we all have a head, 2 hands, 2 feet, just like everybody out there, don't we? We are human beings like everybody else is. And the truth is, if we feed ourselves with the same things that everybody else feeds on, we will become just like everybody else, won't we? And when I say feed, I'm not just talking about physical food now. I'm talking about what goes in to make us what we are. What makes the queen different is the royal jelly. And we who say we belong to God should be feeding on royal jelly. 1 Peter 2 and verse 9, you know it very well. We are, and that's what I want to focus on, we are a royal priesthood. And what makes us royal is royal jelly. Because yesterday David talked about the kingdom. And I've never seen a kingdom without inhabitants. Sure, Jesus is the king, right? Jesus is the one who heads the kingdom. But we are told in 1 Peter 2 here that we are a royal priesthood. And what's the difference in this kingdom that has been set up? The subjects are just like the king. And sometimes I think we forget who we are. Sometimes I think we don't recognize how royalty is in this kingdom. Because in Hebrews, we are told that Jesus is a high priest after the order of Melchizedek. And it makes a clear distinction between his priesthood and the Levitical priesthood. Don't compare the two. Don't liken Jesus to that kind of a priesthood. He's different. He's a king priest. But we become like him. And what's the difference? What's the difference between being royalty and being a regular citizen? Privileges is one of them. Privileges. And that's important for us to recognize. Because as king priests, as a part of the royal priesthood, there are certain privileges that belong to us that we don't want to lay hold on. Ties in with what was said before. We don't believe it. And there are so many ways in which we can begin to accept that. But as I said, the first one is to begin to feed on royal jelly. I want one of the younger people to tell me one practical way in which you could think of feeding on royal jelly. Pardon me? Constant communication with God, yes. Yeah. Feed on the Word of God, of course. Any more? I suppose the rest may tie in with that. The rest may tie in with that, or maybe subsumed. But I think what we're doing here for this camp meeting is a part of feeding, isn't it? And every time you come to something like this, you kind of wish you didn't have to go back home. Because you wish you could just be feeding every day. You know. But you know, in our little group in Spanish Town, we have said this before, and perhaps we don't carry through all the time. But you know, we can carry some of that with us wherever we go and make it happen. One of the bad things about the world today is that all these gadgets take over your life. Ray should know about that. All these gadgets just invade you and demand your attention. But one of the good things about the world today is that because of all these gadgets, you can carry your experience where you go. Because everybody knows how to send an email. And everybody knows how to dial a telephone number. And Digicel gives 25 minutes free after the first 5. If you are in Jamaica. And you get 100 text messages free from Lime after the first 3. And 100 free from Digicel after the first 5. You know something? We've got some ways to communicate with each other. To feed our brothers and sisters with royal jelly. And to feed on it ourselves. And we don't use it for that. We use it for everything else. Young people are, well, I don't know what it's like where you come from. But in Jamaica, young people are stuck on these things. They're always sending text messages. And they have to use their 100 text messages every day. I don't know how they do it. I was talking to my son the other day and I was saying to him, you know, it takes you about a minute to send a text message, right? He said, yes. I said, so when you send 100 text messages for the day, you have used nearly 2 hours of time sending text messages when you could be doing something else. And he agreed. But he still sends 100 text messages every day. How wonderful it would be if we could use 20 of those text messages to feed somebody with royal jelly. And do you know, brothers and sisters, that because of technology, we don't notice our brothers and sisters' needs much anymore? You know how many times there's somebody sitting down at home, perhaps, lonely, dejected? Some of our own brothers and sisters. And if we should take our minds away from the rush and the bustle of life, our minds would probably go to that brother or sister and we could say, but you know, maybe Brother Ken could do with a call. And because of taking our minds away from the hustle and the bustle, God can talk to us. And we can call somebody. And in Jamaica, when you talk for 5 minutes, you get another 25 minutes free. On Digicel anyway. What does Lime do, Peter? After 3 minutes, you get the rest of the half an hour free. Use it to bless somebody. Are you with me? Yeah. Use some of that to bless somebody. $100 with Lime can give you then 3 3 is 9, can give you something like about 10 or so hours. Imagine spending 5 of those 10 hours feeding somebody with royal jelly. One of the concerns I have for the world I live in, and I'm sure we all share that concern, is that it seems like it's not $30. $3 per minute. Okay. Yeah, but Even if that's it, we would have an hour and a half, which would be good. An hour and a half worth of royal jelly. And I know that even people who don't seem to need it, you know, one of the things there's a friend I have, I don't remember what I was saying before, I'll probably get back to it. But I have a friend who I admire very much, and I'm not like that. He is a person who makes an effort to maintain communication with his friends. And it's in a simple little thing like that. Whenever he calls me, I feel appreciated just because my friend called me. You know, sometimes just to know that somebody thinks of you, not a friend who calls you. There are some friends I have, and maybe relatives too, who only call me when they want me to do something for them or they want something from me. And so when I see the number, I say, what do they want now? And I answer. But when I see that friend's number come up, I feel good. A friend remembers me. And even in that, we are feeding each other. When our brothers and sisters remember, I mean, many of us as Sabbath keepers only talk to each other on Sabbath. We only see each other on Sabbath, fine. You may live 1,000 miles away, but we've got a phone. Everybody has a phone today. Everybody has a phone. And just a call sometimes to say, hi, I was thinking of you. Or I was just reading this verse and I thought I would share it with you. Or a text message. I don't like forwarded messages. I don't like these things that somebody has thought up on these. I don't like them really very much because it says to me that, and I could be wrong, sometimes somebody gets a good message and it hits them and they want to share it with me. So there's that too, but I like the personal touch. I like to know that Peter crafted something to me directly. And so it's coming from his thoughts. That's just me, you know. But oh, sorry. Yes, Ray. Yes.
I think it's something we really need to look into and pay more attention. I also have the idea for the trip, the beach that we had, just because of the camaraderie and the communication and the friendship that I think was fostered.
Yes. Yes. We are social creatures. And well, the bees are social creatures too. The difference between us and the bees is that the bees have a sense of purpose. I was telling you earlier on that they go through a couple of stages in development. When they emerge, they become janitors. They start cleaning the hive, looking after it, and they get rid of every little thing. Anything they can't move out, they cover it with propolis to ensure that it can't affect the rest of the hive. Propolis is highly antiseptic and it kills germs and so on. So they'll put a coating of propolis on anything that they can't get out of the hive that shouldn't be there. You know? But after the janitorial stage, they become nurses. And so they go around and they feed every young one, and they feed the queen. The queen doesn't feed herself. They follow her everywhere she goes, and they keep on putting food in her mouth as she goes around laying. And interestingly, the queen can identify the size of the cell And if it's a certain size, she'll put worker eggs in there. If it's bigger, she'll put drone eggs in there. Drones are unfertilized eggs, so they become males. The fertilized eggs become workers or queen. So the bees make these cells to the specified size, depending on what the need of the cell is. And so these bees, being focused, they become nurses, they look after the young ones, and then eventually they become foragers. They go out and they find food. Now, one of the very interesting things that anybody ever heard of the bee dance? Yeah? Okay. One of the very interesting and fascinating things about bees is that when a scout goes out and finds a source of food, he identifies how much is there. He heads back to the she heads back to the hive. We're so male-oriented. She heads back to the hive and she informs the rest of the hive where that food is, how much is there, what direction. And to do that, she gets in the hive and she does a little dance. She wiggles her body in a little dance in a certain direction. And then she comes back around and she does the same little wiggle again, and they're watching and observing, and that is telling them where it is. Now, it seems like the direction and distance is given in that dance, and also the size of the food supply. So they know. Everything. Right. Now, one of the fascinating things, it seems like the direction is given based upon the sun. Now, you know the sun moves. Every 4 minutes the sun moves 1 degree. Or the earth moves. Yes. Now, in order for them to identify where that source is, every 4 minutes the bee changes the position by 1 degree. Now, evolution is a wonderful thing, isn't it? My God is so great. The bees don't go to classes. Nobody teaches them these things. It's built inside of them by evolution. And brothers and sisters, I believe that inside of us are some things that we have stifled. Let me not, people say don't blame Satan. But he has done a good job. And whatever he has done has managed to confuse our sensors. We don't even have a sense of direction anymore. We don't know how to tell our brothers and sisters which direction to go to find this food source anymore. They set up big tents and they have crusades and they talk about things. But by the time they're done with the crusade and they have dipped a few people under the water, they don't know where they're going. Because the workers keep in touch with the queen, they are always aware of what to do and where to go, and they have a sense of purpose. At the break of day, they are out hunting for food. As early as you get up, as long as there is light for them to see, they're hunting for food. Now every day at sometime about 3 o'clock, if you look at one of the hives, we have a few hives at home. If you look at one of the hives, you will see a whole lot of bees flying around. And I'm told that what's taking place at that time is orientation. They get out of the hive and they fly around, look at things around them, see what it's like, so that when the new bees that are going to become foragers, when they head out, they'll be able to find back where the hive is. They go sometimes as far as 5 miles away from their hive to find food. And they always head home, except for when we turn our lights on too early in the evenings and distract them, and then they head for the light. They don't know what to do. The late returners. This thing about bees came to my mind Friday night when I came in. Well, actually yesterday morning after I got up, because I went in David's cabin and I saw a lot of dead bees and I saw a few live ones. And because of my passion for them, the ones that were still alive, I took them outside and let them free. But that told me there was a hive nearby. So I went outside, and sure enough, there's a hive right in the wall of his cabin. But what happens to those poor bees that I found dead in there is that when they turn the light on in the evening, the bees returning miss where they're going. And so they head for the light, and that's it for them. So because we have bees at home, I tell my neighbors, don't turn your lights on too early. Wait a little while until they have got home, and so on. Yeah. So we sometimes need to do a little orientation, see where we are and where we are going. We sometimes need to circle around our environment, our spiritual environment, and see where we are. We need to explore the hive. See what is around it. And you know something? And this is hard for young people especially. But some things that are in our environment, sometimes the kind of music, sometimes the kind of movies, sometimes the kinds of text messages that you receive, sometimes the kinds of conversations that you have, sometimes the kinds of friends in our environment. We need to know which of these things we need to fly around. So we need to do a little exploration, a little orientation sometimes, and see what needs to be moved. And it's kind of hard in today's world with more and more fascinating gadgets coming out. And you need the latest one. So it's hard to fly around some of these things. But we need to ask ourselves a question: what is our purpose? What is it that I want for myself? Are we going to be drones, serving no purpose in the hive whatsoever? Or are we going to be workers? The drones only eat. And if all we do is get to church every Sabbath and feed, then we're drones. Aren't we? We've got to do some cleaning sometimes. We've got to do some nursing sometimes. And we have to do some foraging too, which is to go out and to find sources of nectar and to find people who need these things. And brothers and sisters, I'm just saying this, that we need to examine where we are and what we are doing and see how much our lives are meaningful to those around us and to ourselves. So I just thought I would use something in nature to share these ideas with you. Because, I believe, I know that I'm a part of God's kingdom. I know that I'm a part of the royal priesthood. And I know that each one of you here today is here because you have the same kind of focus. So I just want us to remember who we are. Remember what our purpose here is. Too often we get focused on surviving in life, making sure the house is okay, making sure we can earn some money to do this and to do that, and so on. Too often we get distracted with those things. Let's remember where we're going and how to get there. So, may God keep us focused. May He keep us in His kingdom. If 2012 has any significance at all, we may never meet in a camp meeting like this again. But I expect to see you all in that great camp meeting. And what a day that will be. May God bless you. Now Jerome